I'm Clifford today. And you're not. And yeah, I'm actually here, guys. I'm here in my room. It's not a Wednesday. It is not Wednesday, my dudes. It is Saturday. And on Saturdays, we paint the town. It's a 21 Pilots song. I don't even like that song. I don't know why I'm quoting it, but yeah. Anyways, I'm back. Intro music by John Bartman. I feel like I'm supposed to say that every time. I might not say that every time. It was just kind of an agreement to use the copyright-free music. But yeah, and we're joined by The album of the week is "Good Luck with Whatever" by Dawes. It's a good album. Clifford's still here. He's the only other Clifford that's Clifford. And we're also joined by... You're like crouched and ready to go. Like, I'm having back pains. Lisa is here today. Say hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa. Lisa was here for visiting for the week. Here at my parents' house, by the way. She's not staying over. I don't live by myself, and she's not staying over. She's staying over at my parents' house. I'm trying to clarify before people come out and before the mob comes out to get me for not being a good Christian.
We do not cohabitate.
Yes, it's true. Not until marriage. She's like, She has a mic, by the way, and so she'll be interjecting. Is that the right word I want?
Yeah,
every so
I think
often?
so. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just make it that it is the right word. So yeah, every so often you just might hear a woman's voice. Do not be alarmed. Your television screen is fine. It's just another person here in the room. And unfortunately, I don't have a multicam setup yet. Give me more money. So you'll just be hearing her voice off screen. So yeah. So some things to address. We got a lot of things to talk about, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about all the things. Of course, as you guys know, we're talking about Hillsong and the new docu-series. It's a thing that everyone is talking about. Just under talking about Will Smith smacking Chris Rock at the Oscars. Have you guys heard about that? That was a thing that happened. I'm sure you guys haven't heard about it yet. Are we going to talk about that tonight? No.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Literally every podcast ever that I listen to has talked about it, and there's no need to talk about it. The video has over like 70 million views already, and yeah, so not going to feed into that fire. But yeah, we're talking about Hillsong today, and if we get done with that in a timely manner, we will also talk about some interesting things going on at the Caedmon's Call social media, and we also might talk about Chris Llewellyn from Ren Collective, who's posting some stuff on it. Interesting stuff on social media. So, yeah, but we'll see. We'll see how long I rant about Hillsong. But first, some things to address, some housekeeping. I wanted to say, some of you might have seen, I made a social media post. Well, actually, it was just on Facebook. I said that we were going to be streaming on Twitch as well. And me who has dummy brain, I don't understand some things about technology. For some reason, I thought that with OBS Studio, which is what I use to live stream to you guys, for some reason, I thought that you could stream to multiple platforms at once. And it turns out you can't really do that, not without a plugin. And so I just before the stream, I was like looking for the plugin, and it turns out that I can't do it for free without having some sort of watermark on it. It's this company called Restream, and I'm like, I don't want that. And like to not have it on the stream, it costs like $19 a month, and I'm not sure if I want to do that. I'm gonna be looking into it. I do want to start streaming on Twitch. Any of you Twitchers out there, I don't know if that's really what you call it. But any of you guys who are on the Twitches, you can find me. I'm Clifford today on Twitch. I have the same like profile picture you can check out. You can subscribe to that or follow. I forget what it is. I'm sorry. I'm really not on Twitch. I don't understand the things, but I want to make it happen. So go subscribe over there, and maybe one day it'll show up. Because I just want to get out there. I think it would be cool. So stay tuned about that. I'm going to be looking into that. Some other options I can look into. Also Q&A. We're going to see if we can have a Q&A segment this episode. We'll see. I don't have any questions from last week's episode. So if you are live in the chat, feel free to ask any questions that you want, anything that you want my personal opinion on. You can put it down in the chat, or if you're watching this later, if you're watching this after the live stream, you can leave a question in the comments and we will address it next episode. So yeah. No reviews to read today, but I did have a poll from last week's episode. Not last week's episode, 2 weeks ago. Talking about Elijah Furtick. We talked about Elijah Furtick in the last episode. And so, and for those of you who missed that, Elijah Furtick is the son of Stephen Furtick, and he's a rapper now. He's got a rap album out, and he had a song on there that had some pretty questionable lyrics. And so you can check out that episode. But I asked the question, I left a poll on, for those of you who are listeners on Spotify, you can go to the episode and you can go down, and every episode I leave a question for people to answer, and I also leave a poll for people to participate in. And the poll was, did Elijah Furtick go too far with his lyrics? And of course the options were yes or no. And a few of you voted on there, and the results are a resounding yes, 100%. So, don't have much to say about that, except it feels good to be validated. So, moving on. That's all. That's all the housekeeping. That's all for the episode now. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Clifford.
You sounded like from Elf. Like, bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad.
Thanks, Mr. Narwhal.
Bye-bye. I love the walrus who just starts crying. Bye-bye. Elf. I eventually got tired of that movie, but now I'm gonna lose all my subscribers. I used to love that movie, and I think I watched it too much.
I still love that movie.
That's good.
It's so quotable.
It's true. I think that's why I got tired of it, because like everyone was quoting it, and my mom watched it a lot too. So I think I just
Your mom's so cute. I love your mom.
Yes, I love my mom too.
That's good.
Yeah, everyone love your mothers, no matter what. Just kidding. I'm not gonna go into that.
Okay.
It's like maybe there are reasons not to
Okay,
love your mother.
Clifford.
You should, you should do your best. Anyways, I don't know what that was. Hillsong. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I'm already tired of talking about Hillsong because and everyone's like, "What are you talking about? You've like had one video on Hillsong." And I'm tired of talking about Hillsong and Elevation and Bethel, even though I had one like regular YouTube video about all those churches. And in the previous episode, we kind of talked about Elevation Church. I guess I'm tired of it because I'm very wary. I don't want to become the channel that talks about Hillsong all the time. Where like all my content is about what Hillsong did wrong or what Elevation did wrong. And I'm not saying that those kinds of channels aren't valid, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't call out ministries and people who proclaim to be Christian teachers and call them out on their false teachings. I'm just very tired of it. But and I don't want anyone to think like who's new to the channel that this channel is just going to be all Hillsong bashing or Elevation bashing or any like super mega church bashing. Although I could bash on mega churches all day because I don't really like most mega churches, but don't worry because like I do want this channel to be fun. I would rather talk about more music central things. I want to talk about music that I like, and I want us to have fun. And don't worry, I'm not going to talk about like every little thing that Hillsong does wrong because I try to keep this channel centered on Christian music. And it just so happens that this is related to Christian music because Hillsong has this huge worship music empire. I mean, like they've dominated the worship music industry, and so that's why this is relevant. After this episode, you're not going to find me talking about like the next wrong thing that Brian Houston did or whatever. Unless it's like really big. So I guess that's not much of a promise, but I'm going to be doing my best that after this episode there's not going to be much else. Because honestly, with this whole docu-series and everything, I feel like everything that needs to be said about Hillsong is going to be said. And the things that I'm going to talk about in this episode. Hopefully. Because I don't see this docu-series being good for Hillsong at all, honestly. Like, a lot of people are talking about it. So we're going to talk about it really quick. Hopefully really quick. I'm like the I'm like the pastor that says, "Okay, I'm going to wrap up with this," and then 20 minutes later he's still preaching. I'm not going to be like that. But okay, so there is a docu-series about this church called Hillsong. You heard of it? Do you know there is a docu-series on Hillsong?
What?
Yeah. Everyone's talking about it. It's called Hillsong, a Mega Church Exposed. And it's on Discovery Plus, which I imagine this is like the only thing worth checking out on Discovery Plus. I imagine there's going to be a lot of people who sign up for the free trial and then just dip after finishing the series. Because like who's interested in subscribing to Discovery Plus?
People who like Magnolia stories,
Magnolia?
Joanna and Chip Gaines.
Wait, explain that. to me.
Joanna and Chip Gaines, they were on HGTV,
Okay.
the Home Garden Network.
Oh,
And
wait, are
they,
those people that has their own section in Target?
yes,
Okay. The
exactly.
Target people.
Those people are on Discovery Plus.
They're like a beautiful, perfect couple.
They're so beautiful.
A little
Chip
too
is
perfect.
so funny.
I don't trust them. They're too perfect.
Bubby. I call Clifford Bubby. This might
yeah.
happen during the podcast.
Yeah, don't get confused.
I'm sorry, people.
It's okay. It's like my close knit group of friends, Griffin, Colton, and them, they call me Izzy, and that confuses everyone. And for those of you who might be confused, Izzy is short for Isaiah, which is my middle name, and I used to go by my middle name. But I'm Clifford today, so don't get that confused. But yeah, Lisa calls me Bubby.
So you're Bubby today.
I'm Bubby today. Change the channel name. I'm Bubby today.
Okay.
So
Hillsong.
So I guess they're on Discovery Plus.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I always loved the Discovery Channel, but because like I'm a nerd, but I'm not interested in subscribing to Discovery Plus, and I can't see a whole lot of other people interested, except for nerds. But so they have this docu-series, and I watched it, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who are wondering, is it worth checking out? Because the one fear that I had was, well, this is a secular, seemingly, Discovery is a secular company or studio, whatever, and they're approaching this topic involving a Christian church. This could get ugly, because when this tends to happen, when they're attacking a specific Christian sect, they tend to blame all of Christianity on it. So rather than it just being centered on Hillsong, it also becomes about Christianity as a whole. So I had those fears, and I know a lot of other people had those fears. But I watched it, and fortunately, it's not. I think they came at it in a very respectful way, and I wouldn't be surprised if the actual filmmakers were Christians, because some of the things that they addressed, I was kind of surprised that a secular studio would address, and I'll talk about that. So did you check the live stream? Is it doing okay? Oh, okay. I saw someone come in and dip. Like, nope. He's got a Clifford stuffed animal. Not into it. Anyways, so the docu-series is split up into 3 episodes. 3 about an hour long episodes. So they're like 50 minutes. And I'm just going to, break it down for you guys.
Break it down.
Break it down. It's time for the breakdown. No, that's SmackDown. I'm thinking of SmackDown, the wrestling thing. I don't want to go too into things, because I kind of just want everyone to watch the docu-series. There you have it, just out the gate. My stamp of approval. Go check out the docu-series. I think it's very interesting. I learned a lot of things that I didn't know about, just like from, all the news articles and all the controversy.
Get that free trial.
Yeah, free trial. Or find other ways to do it.
Nope, get that free
Get
trial.
The free trial, yes. Lisa says get the free trial. Just don't forget that you subscribed, or else you'll forget, and then you'll accidentally end up paying for a month.
Don't forget the free trial.
Yes. Don't forget that you subscribed to Discovery Plus and because I've definitely done that. So 3 episodes. I'll go into the first episode. The first episode does a pretty good job at going into the history and culture of Hillsong. Talks about beginnings, and I knew this before, but I totally forgot. Hillsong kind of branched out of Assemblies of God, which is where I'm originally from. Um, I, I'm not really sure exactly where I'm at today, but I'm kind of in that spectrum. That's my dad was Assemblies of God pastor, and so it was interesting to be reminded that that's kind of where Hillsong came out of, and then they just kind of went on their own um, with Brian Houston, and I think it actually started with his dad. I'm forgetting. Hopefully, I don't botch this up horribly. But they did a good job at like getting into the dream and vision that Brian Houston had with Hillsong, and started getting into its early days of success. Starting with the Hillsong music. The Hillsong music played a huge part in the church's success, and I think they did a pretty good job at talking about all that. And so once they got through all the history and just kind of where they are at now, they talked about the culture, and the cool thing about this docu series is, and this is what I look for in most documentaries, is that I can't stand most documentaries that have like some sort of voiceover narrator that are like, this is what's going on and this is what you should believe. I much prefer documentaries that just allow the subjects to speak for themselves. So they have interviews with a lot of people, and they just kind of let them narrate the whole documentary and everything that they're talking about. Although I will say, and these are the nitpicks that I have about the series, is that sometimes you can kind of tell when, kind of like in movie trailers, you can kind of tell how some audio segments are edited and kind of spliced together. It didn't happen all the time, but it happens a few times, and I'm like, oh, that's I don't like that, because I don't like to feel like I'm being manipulated. But it didn't happen too much, so it didn't bother me too much. But anyways, most of the people that they're interviewing are people who were formerly involved in Hillsong. They have volunteers from different Hillsong locations. They even have some former Hillsong pastors and leaders who are pastors at a Hillsong church. So it's very interesting, and there's also people, and we'll get into this. There's some people that they interviewed that were involved in Carl Lentz's church before Hillsong, before he went to Hillsong. So there's some interesting stuff there. But so yeah, so when they're going into the culture of Hillsong, they're interviewing these volunteers and former members about what it was like, and how Hillsong was just really good at like having, a high energy environment, and just being welcome to everyone. And I don't think that anyone can deny that Hillsong and those types of churches really nail the hospitality, um, the portion of church. They really nail it, and they do a good job at getting people into it and plugged in. And so that's really interesting to see. And they talked about how certain how most campuses at Hillsong, you'd see just a line outside the door, like a concert, like you would see at a concert. So, and then they started talking about the music, which I think was pretty interesting, and I'm glad that they addressed it. I think what they addressed makes is stuff is what I basically talked about in in my Hillsong Elevation and Bethel video about sorry, about the emotionalism aspect of their music. And they talk about whether, like, well, is sorry, I'm just trying to gather my thoughts. Am I feeling this emotion while listening to this music because I love God and I'm actually moved by his presence? Or is it because I'm being manipulated by these chord progressions and by these, the building up of the music and all this? And I'm really glad that they addressed those things, because that's what I've been talking about for a while and thinking about. And that's something that I've been kind of wary of in modern music today. And granted, that doesn't mean that it's not okay to have, like, emotion in your music. And puppy, my dog has come to interrupt the stream. Watson, sorry. Here, let's say hello. Hello. He's like, oh, I'm on the screen.
Best guest on the show today.
Hey. Say hello to everyone. He doesn't like being on the screen. Okay. That's Watson. He's a West Island Terrier, and he needs a BATH. Oh, yes? Is that what you think? Yeah? He gets nervous around screens. He doesn't like them. He thinks that there's actual people when they show up on the screen. And he's just like, I'm going to get you out of there. He wants to save everyone. Anyways, okay, go on. Time for you to go. Can you try to maybe get him out?
Watson, go on.
Just walk him to the stairs. Maybe. Sorry.
Come on, Watson.
Go downstairs.
Come here.
I love you, but you're being a little chaotic. He's just got so much chaotic energy. Okay, anyways. I just want to address a few things real quick and we'll go to a break. So the music. I'm glad that they addressed things about the music. And something I'm also glad that they addressed that I was surprised, because this is a secular studio, they talk about prosperity gospel. And that's not something that I would expect from a secular studio, because, like, they don't really know much about the gospel in the first place. So, and they talk about Brian Houston's thanks, baby.
You are welcome.
I'm sure people were very happy to see Watson, but he can't be whining the whole time. For those of you who don't know, Brian Houston has been known to teach a prosperity gospel. He has like a whole book about money, and he's talking about how, there's a scripture, and I'm going to do my Brian Houston Australian voice. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, let the poor man say, I am rich again. How was that?
Yeah.
Thanks, baby. But yeah, he's like twisting scripture to preach this prosperity gospel. And you wouldn't think, because you don't really, I'm sure most people haven't really even heard Brian Houston speak. I think they mostly know Hillsong from their music, but it's true. That's kind of what they preach, and I'm glad that they addressed that, and that was kind of a big selling point for Brian Houston when spreading, the good news of Hillsong, so to speak. And so I'm glad that they talked about that. So yeah, the first half of that episode, they talk about the culture and the history of Hillsong and what it was like. And they also I'm pretty sure it was in this episode, somewhere in the docu-series, they talk about the aspect of abusing free labor, which I think is interesting, and I feel like was touched a little close to home because I was in a discipleship ministry that since leaving, I've talked to some friends and they've talked about how like, yeah, we really feel like our like the one that we were at really abused its power of free labor, of being able to use volunteers uh to to be able to do work at Hillsong. And I think that's an interesting thing that not many people have talked about, and be interested um to see that talked about more, I guess. Um but and they talk about that. And then in the later half of the episode, they start talking about Carl Lentz. And Carl Lentz was the pastor of the New York campus, but he was also basically the poster child of Hillsong. He basically became the face of Hillsong more than Brian Houston was at the time, because he became known as what was the celebrity pastor. He was the one who was hanging out with Justin Bieber and all these other celebrities, and he's showing up in these celebrities' Instagram posts and such, and everyone's like, "Who's this guy? Who's this pastor that's hanging out with celebrities?" And so they talk about him. They talk about his behavior and what he was like, and it's just really interesting to get to know him, and basically how Brian Houston just paraded him, and how much he was just like, oh man, this is like the new young fresh face for Hillsong. He's gonna do so much, and he did. And the people in the interviews were just kind of talking about how what his personality was like, and they start talking about the problematic things, like for those of you who don't know about the Instagram account Preachers and Sneakers, that's a whole interesting thing about, this Instagram account that posts preachers with very expensive clothing, and he compares the prices with how much they actually cost. And so they go into that whole thing because, like, you see Carl Lentz wearing Supreme and like all these really expensive brands, and basically talking about the idea of like how what happens to a church's money when people give to in their offering. Like, is the money um going to like actual good things like charity or like building the church, or is it going straight to the pockets of the preachers and the pastors so that they can buy Supreme and Gucci or whatever? I don't really know expensive brands or whatever, but that's basically what you see in Preachers and Sneakers calls. I said I wasn't going to go too deep into what happens in the docu-series, but it's really interesting because Preachers and Sneakers has a phone call with Carl Lentz, and how he addresses that whole controversy. And then episode 1 leaves on a cliffhanger, and it seems that they're going to talk about the sexual moral failures of Carl Lentz in episode 2. So, yeah, wow, still talking about this, and I'm barely into it. So, if you want to learn more about it, we're gonna take a break, and so you guys can just stay tuned, and we're gonna come back, and we're gonna keep talking about my feelings about the docu series, and just basically covering all the things, almost most of the basic things that they cover in the docu series. So yeah, stay tuned, and we're gonna come back with that right after these messages. So don't go away. We'll be right. We'll be right back. We'll be right back, Lisa. Don't go away.
Oh, I'll stay here.
Okay, me too. I'm gonna stay frozen until it's time.
Let it go.
Yeah. Let it go. What?
Frozen.
Oh, yes, thank you.
You're welcome,
All right,
everyone.
we'll be right back.
These messages. We'll be right back.
All right, we're back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to the I'm Clifford Today show, not affiliated with NBC. Still waiting for that strike from NBC, and it hasn't happened yet, so we're good. And we're back with more Hillsong talk. Griffin's in the chat, and he just posted the all-seeing eye in the chat. At least that's what it seems like. It's just an eye. And I think that just means there's a lot of conspiracies going on with Hillsong. I think they're involved in the Illuminati. Maybe not, but...
They're flat earthers. I'm just kidding. That's not canon.
Don't spread misinformation.
Fake news.
We're going to get flagged by YouTube.
Sorry.
Going to get one of those COVID tags on
I
our
was
video.
just kidding. It was a joke. It was a joke.
Satire. Anyways. So, docu-series starts talking about... Oh, episode 2. We're in episode 2. Now, mostly everyone knows about Carl Lentz's behavior, the whole controversy, and so I don't have to go deep into that. But basically, Carl, who's married, he has kids. He found this random woman at a park and started talking to her and started texting her, and she didn't realize that he was married, and she didn't realize at first that he was, a celebrity pastor from Hillsong until she looked him up later, and they were together for a few months until Carl was found out. They found texts on his computer, and so that's what happened there. But what's really interesting in this episode is that they go into Carl's what do you call it? His views of sexual purity beforehand, before this all happened, and the people that they interview who were a part of his church before he moved to Hillsong, and the people that they interview who are still involved in Hillsong. They talk about, and they even show clips of Carl being very strong very strong and strict. Like he was even a little too strict for me about purity and all that stuff. Like I think he got a little laxed on it when he joined Hillsong. In terms of, I mean, obviously, but when in terms of like his teaching on it and his instructions on how to stay sexually pure. But even at his church, they talked about how in that church, you know, it was just like very, very conservative levels of purity. And a couple of the girls that they interview, this one girl talked about how, you know, her and her boyfriend, they, um, again, I'm going deep into the docu series when I want you to watch it. She and her boyfriend, you know, they do it, they do the act, and then they decide to confess it to Carl, their pastor, and rather than being like patient and understanding, he was very strict, and they couldn't do ministry for like 6 months. They were pulled off the worship team for like 6 months, and just very strict disciplinary actions. And they said they were talking about in the meeting how Carl was like very upset. And so, and you have all these clips of Carl teaching about purity and all this, and he was very, very strong about it. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm all for, you know, sexual purity and all that. But it was just some of the measures that they took, and I'm like, I don't know if I would take it that far. Um, but basically, they're making this point to show his hypocrisy, basically. And so the docu series goes into that because obviously he's a hypocrite. He falls in love with this woman, and you know, they're active, and then it comes out that Carl has apparently flirted with a lot of the other people involved in the church, and so that whole thing happens. That's the thing that most everyone knows about, and that's basically the main focus of episode 2 is talking about those kinds of stuff. And episode 3 is basically to show that like all that with Carl Lentz was basically the tip of the iceberg, and how they go into that Brian Houston most likely knew about Carl's behavior before it ever became public. And it wasn't until like the whole thing blew up that they had to say something about it. And they go into how Brian Houston has basically used Carl Lentz as a scapegoat for like everything wrong with the church, and how it was all him and it had nothing to do with the leadership. And they go into that in episode 3. They also talk about the Hillsong School, the college, which I think is the weakest point of the docu-series because I don't know, it was just really weird. They interview some former students of Hillsong, and it's basically like, yes, I had all these expectations of what the school was going to be like, and I went there and it ended up not being like that. So shame on Hillsong. And then there was this other story, which I don't want to downgrade any of these stories. Like, these are obviously bad things to happen, but like, I think the docu-series is trying to treat them as like a smoking barrel in some sense, but they don't really compare to the rest of the stuff that happens. But there's this girl that talks about how because her dad was a veteran, she got like a veteran's discount or whatever, or like a check. I forget how it works, and they sent it in for her to pay for her tuition, and she gets to Hillsong and she finds that it wasn't there, like it either didn't arrive or they lost it or whatever. And I'm like, well, that sucks, but you know, that could happen. Um, so I don't know. I just felt like it was a weird point in the docu-series. But anyways, they go on to the much uh, juicier stuff. Um, they talk more about Brian Houston and the more recent allegations concerning his father, who there are now accusations from this man who used to attend his father Brian Houston's father's I think it's what's his father's name? I think it's Andy Houston. Um, and how basically he assaulted this man at a young age. Um, like sexually assaulted him. And he didn't say anything about it for years. And then when he finally did, the church tried to cover it up, and they tried to pay him off, and apparently he's had even Brian Houston has been involved and has been trying to cover it up for years, and so assuming that this is all true, I guess it's still under investigation. Um, it's really really sad and really messed up. And now Brian Houston, which this isn't covered in the docu-series, but Brian Houston has officially stepped down. He is no longer a part of Hillsong. And um and there's also the other things that happened that I didn't know about. There's this woman who was involved in one of the campuses at Hillsong, and she was basically violated and molested by a leader on the staff there. And when she finally reported it, no, she was a student. She was a student at the school, and her dad was a pastor at another church. And when she tried to report it, the church staff, leadership, or whatever, they basically hardly did anything about it. And they were more accusatory towards her than anything. And when her dad finally tried to get involved, and it became a bigger deal, even Brian Houston had to address it, and they basically made it out how like they that it was unfortunate, but they also tried to paint it as like, well, it's not true, it's because there's a whole lot of details into it. But for me to hear that story was very, very concerning. On top of all this other stuff going on with Brian Houston and his dad, and how Brian Houston has basically tried to, keep that from the public eye, and yeah, so that's basically all that the docu-series covers.
Was it just one episode, or was it
Three
like
episodes.
It was 3 episodes?
Yeah.
And there's no more coming out.
No
It's
more.
Okay.
Yeah.
No more.
It was just a short little mini series. Akil Hawk in the chat says it's very sad. I think I'm pronouncing your name right. It's very sad to see this mega church fall. What's crazy is I would say that like 80 to 90% of most non-denominational churches' worship songs are written by Hillsong.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to say. Like, if you guys haven't seen the video that I did on Hillsong, Bethel, and Elevation, I share my thoughts on this whole like, should we play their songs in our churches conversation. And I feel like I was maybe a little lenient, more lenient than most people. But now, after watching this documentary, it makes me less and less willing to play anything by them, even the songs that I consider good, because it's just so like everything is tainted, and everything is just because with their leadership and everything, their leadership is like so corrupt. It's hard to trust anything that is coming out of Hillsong. And I don't want to be a part of that. Akil Hawk says, so now what? So now what? Um, and I wanted to share, like, with this docu-series, I think this is going to be really bad for Hillsong, because like everyone is watching it, and I'm glad that this docu-series is out. But what I want to say is that there there was smoke before there was fire. A lot of people were saying all the questionable things about Hillsong involving their teaching, with prosperity gospel and such, and like all the questionable theology that they promoted, and everything with their music. Like, people warned about this for a long time, and now we're just seeing the fruits of all that. I think we're seeing the fruits of a lack of proper biblical and strong leadership. Coming from Brian Houston, and then to Carl Lentz. I think all that is just the results of not being founded biblically properly, and now we're just seeing the fruits of that labor, and I think a lot of people are thinking, oh well, now that they've gotten rid of Carl Lentz, and now Brian Houston isn't even involved, so Hillsong must be good. um I wouldn't say that, especially with the whole thing with the girl who was in the past few years, who accused this leader from Hillsong. I think a lot of it is just negatively affected by the top down leadership, and it wasn't the problem with Hillsong wasn't just with all the sexual immoral allegations and everything. It was with their teaching, and just how they approached all that, and how like all their sermons are basically just Christian motivational speeches. And I just think that that's a recipe for disaster. And I think we may see more stories like this with other big ministries or mega churches, like Elevation. Maybe I would not be surprised if we hear stuff coming out of there, or with
Ravi Zacharias.
Yes, exactly. With
Yeah.
even, and that's a good example too, because with Ravi Zacharias, there was also smoke before there was fire,
Mm.
because Ravi Zacharias, while he wasn't like all the way like bad theology, I think there was one time where um it seemed that he was kind of edging a little bit towards universalism. And there's one time where he spoke at a that, don't take my word for this. Look this up, but I'm pretty sure he spoke at a Mormon church or Mormon convention, and he like did nothing to like challenge their beliefs or anything.
Mm.
It was very like shallow, just kind of like, oh, happy to be here, and doing nothing to like challenge them. So there's a lot of questionable things, and that seems to be the pattern when there are leaders who don't seem to be strong in terms of like the things that are most important with teaching and being biblically founded. Like that should be a red flag, because I don't think anything good can come out of that. Maybe not anything, but like eventually that's going to be a recipe for disaster, I think.
So what's like a recipe for not disaster? Like, how do we combat that? We good theology,
Yes,
know,
good deal. And
but
granted,
also
um, that doesn't always. I mean, of course, there have been Christian leaders and teachers who do teach sound teaching, and then they have a moral failure.
yeah.
They backslide in some way, but it is something.
Yeah.
It's better than not sound teaching. Um, and I'd say accountability is a big thing. Having been in ministry myself, I know there's a tendency for ministers to uh, isolate themselves and not want to be
Mm.
open about things. And I just,
That's a problem.
yeah,
Like it's a problem to like be on a stage and not feel like you can air your air your baggage, you know?
yeah,
And you have to hide things like Brian Houston wanted to hide his dad and like
mm-hmm,
because but we have to combat that. There's got to
yeah,
be vulnerability and there's got to be some way that leaders can get help.
yeah, yeah. I agree, and I think the whole like being biblically founded affects a lot of things because if you're not biblically founded, you're not going to be you're not going to have a whole lot of like protection for yourself when you're um being attacked by the devil, being attacked by
Mm.
temptation. So it doesn't really it doesn't really surprise me that people that don't seem to be biblically founded have trouble combating temptation. And I think
Mm.
that is kind of the heart of a lot of it. If someone who truly was biblically founded um faces temptation, they should know how to deal with it, and they should be the kind of person that would reach out for help if they feel like that they're struggling
Mm.
in an area. So there's that. There is the part on the personal individual, and there's also the part on the ministry to promote accountability. And also we need to stop this whole model of with like mega churches and such, because like I just don't see how that's really helpful, like
Mm.
I'm all for like people giving tithes and offerings to support the church, but I haven't been able to see like a perfect example of a big mega church with like multiple campuses and how that does well. Because when you're stuck in that ministry, um any wrong thing can just uh destroy the whole thing, can pull the whole thing apart. So I feel like a lot of people who are stuck in that model are they're afraid, and they don't want to be, you know, the like in Jenga, they don't want to be that one piece when you pull out the whole thing falls apart.
Mm.
Because like everything
Yeah.
has to be perfect, everything has to build together well, um, or be built together. Um, I so I don't see really any good coming out of that. I think we need to be very careful about our church models these days, because when you turn the church into a business,
Mm.
then you have to save face. Everything has to look good,
Mm.
and so I think that brings a lot of unneeded pressure on everyone involved in the church.
Mm.
And so I think we just need to I personally just think we need to stray away from the whole megachurch model. Um, Akil Hawk also says even classic songs like "Shout to the Lord," which was written by Darlene Sheck. I never really knew how to pronounce her name. Who was the head of music at Hillsong. Uh, no one is above temptation. Look at Bob Coy from Calvary Chapel, Fort Lauderdale. Um, I actually don't know about that one. Bob Coy. Have you heard that one?
Mm.
Maybe you can look that up. Um, but yeah, no one is above temptation, and that's why having the freedom of people being accountable to each other is very important. And yeah, just straying away from this model that just promotes that everything has to be perfect and everything no one is allowed to be imperfect. And that's what I think what the whole business model does. And people are afraid to be vulnerable and be open and honest.
So
And yeah,
what do leaders do then when they face temptation? Um, well, what should you do biblically when you face temptation? Maybe even just as a congregant, not in leadership.
well, I mean, the big thing is to, I mean, I feel like I'm gonna say some very basic stuff,
That's okay.
but like, that's really all it is. It's like, you know, read your Bible, you know, get that ammunition that you need to use against the devil. Like, follow Jesus' example of being tempted by the devil in the desert. Uh, use scripture. Like, read the Bible and use scripture as your weapon. I mean, it's called the sword of the Spirit for a reason, you know. And speaking of scripture, the Bible says flee from the devil when you're faced in temptation. Just, you know, get out of that situation that you're in. Just like don't even worry about like just hanging around whatever situation that is that you're being tempted in. Just get out of there, whatever that means, you know. And you know, we're humans and we're imperfect, so when we do fail or struggle, we shouldn't keep that to ourselves. You know, that's what the church is for. Even if you're in ministry, every person in ministry leadership should have someone above them to talk to, that they can confide in. So so Rob Coy, he had an affair with his secretary. It was like 10 years ago, I think. But yeah, okay, yeah. I guess I the name sounds familiar. And I guess I wasn't as familiar with that story, but it happens, you know, and it's unfortunate. And it usually is the case of people falling and just keeping it a secret, and having no one to confide in, or at least not feeling the courage to do that.
There's a lot of shame
Yeah.
that comes with temptation. You
Yeah.
need to overcome that in order to be vulnerable with somebody, in order to be accountable.
Right. And I think also we need to promote the idea that if you're a young person or if you're someone who is interested in the ministry, my advice, if you are struggling with a certain hang up or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
CR language, hang
Yeah.
up habit, or what was the other one?
Hurt.
Yeah. My advice would be to deal with that before you step into any position of ministry. Depending on what it is, because of course we're not perfect. But if it's like that big of an issue, my recommendation is to maybe hold off for a little while before getting into ministry. Ministers aren't supposed to be perfect, but they should at least have a good handle on, you know, their walk with Christ and all that. And this is, I guess I'm going to be a little vulnerable here. You know, going into ministry, I had my own issues to deal with in terms of, I think I shared actually in the last episode that I'm going to CR for like sexual integrity stuff. That was still a big problem even while I was in ministry. And I think that was a big factor when it came to me leaving ministry. I'm like, I still have these issues, so I don't think I'm really fit for a position of ministry at this time in my life anyways. So just coming from personal experience, that is my advice to to everyone. Akil Hawk says, if you are in ministry, maybe take a break.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's sabbaticals. You know, there's nothing wrong with like being like, hey, I gotta step away for a while and deal with this before I come back to ministry. Which is why like there was the Christian comedian John Crist who it became public that he was texting girls at his shows and such, and so he stepped away and worked on himself. He stepped away from comedy and from doing what he was doing, and he worked on himself. I think he might have went to like a rehab or something. But yeah, to all you ministry leaders or pastors out there, don't be afraid. You know, it's going to get worse if you don't do something about it now.
Yeah, if you just let it fester,
Yeah.
the wound doesn't get better.
Yeah, and you're only going to probably end up doing stupider things that will make things worse. So,
I wonder if there's like some sort of need for like a group for kind of like Celebrate Recovery for people in leadership.
there is, I have been told that there is a pastor's Celebrate Recovery.
That's great.
Yeah. So if you can find out about that, like talk to, if you're like connected to Celebrate Recovery in any way, I'm still talking to ministry leaders and pastors. Connect with your like local CR, like district what's it called again? Director?
That sounds right.
Yeah. The thing, the thing. And find out if there are any like pastor CR groups. And I've heard that that's a great place to get connected to and be open with people, because being a pastor, of course there is a certain amount of discretion that you have to take. You can't be too open with everything with your congregants. But you need someone to talk to. And that would be a good avenue to be able to do that.
That's great. I know in Arkansas there was, for youth pastors, they had a group going where they would get together and meet together.
Yeah.
And that was kind of similar. There was accountability there and also just a sharing of ideas. And so even if there isn't like a Celebrate Recovery, which is like a support group for people, that you've got to have support some other way. So just like any organic sort of group that you can become a part of, where there's like confidentiality and where you can go in and not have that shame and just be like, hey, I'm struggling with this. It's so needed because like Akil said, and like this just happens even if there is good theology. Like, we are not above temptation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I say that those two aspects are most important. Be biblically founded. Just do it. And find a group of people that you can be honest and vulnerable with.
And who will pray with you, who will pray for you. We need to pray for our leaders. They're like, it's a spiritual battle, like this life.
Yep, the higher you are up in leadership, the more susceptible you probably are to temptation, to attacks from Satan. Akil Hawk also says, it turns out he's in, or they are in ministry. Sorry, I don't know if you are a guy or girl. yeah, and your board or elders aren't the place to go. Oh, that must mean about being open and honest.
Hmm.
About transparency with your congregation. Yeah, it's true. You have to have some level of that. So find someone who's maybe not even a part of your church. Or
Mm.
find a group that's not involved in your church that you can be honest about. Because maybe you're having struggles with someone who is in the congregation, and so that's like sensitive information. But anyways, this podcast has become the ministry advice podcast.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be a
Oh, it's
music
so
podcast.
important. It's like
It is, yeah, and it kind of is like a continuation from our conversation in the Gavi incident. But yeah, basically, and I guess I want to end with this with Hillsong. I just think that we need to. My personal opinion is stay away from Hillsong, even though Brian Houston is apparently no longer involved, and Carl Lentz obviously isn't involved. Yes, he is fine. Okay, good. It is a he. Not that it wouldn't be good if you were a girl. I don't know what I'm saying. What was I saying? So stay away from Hillsong because it's still very sketchy. The system is still in place, and I still am very, very skeptical of megachurch systems that are built on money. Not that I'm anti-money. I'm not anti-capitalist or anything, but it gets really sketchy when the church is involved in like making money and having a brand. It's I don't trust it. And so I think it's best that even though all this has seemingly passed, well, we're still waiting for the results with the investigation with Brian Houston and his father, but as far as everyone knows, Hillsong is no longer connected, but I don't think that that's that we still should um take that as a sign that everything's a-okay with Hillsong. Because I don't trust it, and I don't trust what they're teaching and everything. And I also just don't trust the culture, the whole like hype culture with the music and with the energy and how everything looks like a concert. But that's just my personal opinion.
Hmm.
Uh, what I can't figure out is how you have such great songs with crappy theology. Yeah. Well, I would argue, and I said this in my Hillsong Bethlehem elevation video, is that Hillsong has some thongs that are actually pretty great. Um, there's Man of Sorrows. There's Oh Praise the Name. Very, I'd say, theologically sound in my book. But it is kind of a mixed bag. There are other songs that they have that are weird and I don't like. So, but like I said earlier in this episode, I think I'm just gonna stay away completely because I don't want one Spotify stream. I don't want that half a cent to go to Hillsong.
Hmm.
But that's just kind of where my convictions lie. But it's true. They really know how to craft their craft. They have great production quality with their music. Same goes to Bethel. Bethel has great production quality with their music. But so do all those other, pick any secular artist. They have music that sounds great, but it has nothing to do with like good theology or anything. But yeah, they're good at what they do, but that's just kind of the whole thing. So, I think we're gonna put a close on this conversation. Let me know what you any questions that you guys have on this topic. If you guys are watching this after the live stream, you can post in the comments, and we'll talk about it in the next episode. But for now, we're gonna put a close on the conversation. We're not gonna be able to get to. I wanted to talk about Chris Llewellyn. I he has a his name. I always think about No Country for Old Men, with his name, because Josh Brolin's character is Llewellyn, and he has a little wife with the southern accent. Like, oh, Llewellyn, are you gonna be home? You gonna come back home tomorrow? No, please don't die, Llewellyn. So, Chris Llewellyn said some very interesting things on social media, and I think we'll try to talk about it in the next episode, and cover all of that. However, I did want to talk briefly, because this is a very brief topic, about Caedmon's Call. For those of you who are not familiar with Caedmon's Call, they were very big in like the late 90s and early 2000s of Christian music, and they haven't released any music in years. And I was a fan. Did you ever listen to Caedmon's Call, Lisa?
No,
Familiar with any of their music?
I am not.
They have the one song that my mom loves, like, I'm so thankful that I'm incapable of doing any good on my own. Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yep. I listened to Barlow Girl and Hawk Nelson.
Oh. All the girls and the boys, people making noise. Caedmon's Call was more like folky indie. They're kind of in the vein of Jars of Clay.
Oh, nice.
Except Jars of Clay is more rocky. Now, they started out folky, but they're kind of like in that same. Like, if you were a fan of one, you were probably a fan of the other. And they've been more active on their social media lately, which is interesting. So they changed their profile pic to this. This is now I'm waking up, now I'm breaking up, now I'm making up for lost time. And that is the lyrics to one of their old songs, This World, is from their debut self-titled album. So it was like, oh, what is that? And then they made this post the same day, and that's the cover of their debut self-titled album, with the caption, "It's hard to believe our debut album came out 25 years ago today. It changed all of our lives. Feels like maybe our lives are going to change again."
Ooh.
And they put a link to their website, and basically the link is like a countdown, and I think there's like 19 days left. Let's take a look. Yep, 19 days, 10 hours, 39 minutes, and 48 seconds. And it says down here, something new and old is happening soon. Sign up on the Caedmon's Call email list below and be the first to know. So I probably will do that so that I have the scoop. And they made some other posts. Someone made this Photoshop picture of what the announcement could be. The Caedmon's Call Cruise, which is a jab at DC Talk, when a few years ago they were like, something big is coming, and then it turned out it's just it was a reunion show on a cruise. So people were upset about that. It was like, I'm not gonna pay like thousands of dollars to go on a cruise. Like, do a tour, for gosh sakes. Anyways, and then they made some other posts, and they made this post. As you probably assumed by now, we have a big announcement coming soon. Trust us, you'll want to be on our email list before the countdown runs out. Let's take care of that, shall we? And that's all. That's all they've said. So I am pretty excited about what it could be, because I appreciate their music. Killhawk says, "Hey man, good chat. Thanks, Killhawk." And he says, "The good Hawk Nelson, bring him back. Bring him LOL.
It's true.
Yeah, Hawk Nelson is. I don't even know if they still do music since that lead singer left and left the faith, basically. So I don't know if they found someone else. Um, Killhawk says maybe a 25th anniversary vinyl release and tour. Oh, I would be excited about a vinyl release. I don't know why I didn't think of that. I think it's mostly because Christians don't release vinyl. For some reason, Christian artists don't like to release vinyl. Unless you're an indie artist. But like anyone in the mainstream CCM, which I guess Caedmon's Call isn't anymore. They were back in the day, but now they are considered more like underground, sorta, kinda. Because like Jars of Clay have released vinyls, so it could be. That's because they said something about it being old. It's something old and new. So my theories of what it could be is that it could be a re-release because as from what I remember, this album, this debut album, is not on any streaming services for some reason. Um, so that would be nice because there's a couple songs on that album that I really do love. Even though he's not, um, as far as I know, Derek Webb is not a Christian anymore, but I always appreciated his songwriting. He's a great songwriter. Just not yeah. I could go into that. Apparently he's on staff at a church and he directs people in their deconstruction. So that's great. But anyways, there's some great songs on there that he wrote on this album that I would love to be able to listen to. I would definitely get a vinyl of it, or if it was on streaming, I would totally listen to it. I love the song. There's two songs on there that I love. I Just Don't Want Coffee Tonight and Bus Driver. They're both great songs. So it could be a re-release, or maybe it's a remake of the album, like a new studio remake of all the songs, which they've already done a remake of Bus Driver for their Chronicles album. So I don't know because they're saying it's something new and old. So maybe it's a double album. Maybe they're re-releasing this album and also have some new material. I guess we just won't know until 19 days, and I'll definitely talk about it at least briefly whenever the announcement does come out. Um, but yeah, or on Tooth and Nail. Oh yeah, talking about vinyls. Yes, Tooth and Nail, they do vinyls, and that's great. They should. Tooth and Nail and Solid State bands love to re-release. Yes, um, I've got a couple of those re-releases, um, re-release stuff on vinyl. Yes, and so I was talking about my complaint about Christians not releasing things on vinyl. The same was for Newsboys, and I always wanted "Take Me to Your Leader" on vinyl, and then they finally did. They re-released it on vinyl. So, and then Audio Adrenaline re-released "Bloom" on vinyl, and I think it was Switchfoot's "New Way to Be Human." So more Christians need to get on this because vinyl is, at this time in history, sells more than CDs do. So if you still want that money from physical copies, spend the money for vinyls because people are into that. I know maybe I guess soccer moms don't really care about vinyl, so like all those CCM artists, maybe it makes sense, but yeah, looking at Killhawk says looking at you, Zayo. I need to listen to more Zayo actually, at least their old stuff. Really, no way. Yep, it's but I think you missed the train on that with the Newsboys album if that's what you're excited about because it was a limited release, but it's my favorite album, so I was very excited to get it. Okay, so Caedmon's Call. We shall see what we shall see. when that comes out. Real quick before we end the show, it's time for music review because I don't want to leave you guys hanging on that. Just some songs, just a couple songs that that came out recently that I enjoy and think that you guys should check out. So, maybe you guys have heard of the Worship Initiative. I think they were started by Shane and Shane. They're at least affiliated with Shane and Shane, where they've done music together. And mostly a lot of what they do is they take worship songs that they like and they cover them. And they'll usually like have a whole album together of like all the more recent worship songs that they like. Sometimes they pick old stuff too and just kind of recreate them. And I've always appreciated what they do because they pick a lot of the good worship songs and the good hymns and such that are like theologically sound. I have a lot of appreciation for them. And this one is called Trinity Song, and which, speaking of Caedmon's Call, the original is written by Sandra McCracken, and wait, is it Sandra McCracken or Sarah McCracken? What is wrong with me today? Whoever she is, she wrote the original, and she actually was married to Derek Webb of. It is Sandra McCracken, Derek Webb of Caedmon's Call, and then they had a divorce, and then like not too long after, Derek Webb announced that he had left the faith. But she is still going strong in her faith, obviously in this song. I really enjoyed this song. If you're a worship leader out there looking for some good music, Trinity Song is it's a chorus, and it is repetitive because it kind of has the same lines over and over, but it's really good stuff. And I'm not one to say that like repetitive choruses should be avoided completely. I think there's some good stuff in there because there's something very liturgical and congregational about it sometimes. Unless it's something like what's a bad like worship song that has a repetitive lyric?
Oh, what was that one? Your love never fails, it never gives up, never runs out on me. That one seems to go on forever and ever.
Never runs out on me. Your love. It's basically what it is. But the lines that are in here are very good. It's talking about the Trinity and such. And so and the song, it sounds beautiful, has a beautiful arrangement to it. So I highly recommend it. Trinity Song by the Worship Initiative. Go check it out. Next, we got some more stuff from John Mark McMillan.
Woo!
John Mark McMillan. I as you guys know, I am a fan of his artistry, his creative style, and he has a new song called "Prove My Love." And while I don't think it's his strongest song, and also I don't really know what John Mark is doing. He's been releasing a lot of singles as opposed to. He doesn't have any announcement for like a new album or anything, so I don't know exactly what he's doing. Killhawk said, "Or I could sing of your love forever and ever and ever, oh and forever."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Although I have a lot of nostalgia attached to that song. I like the verses.
Same, but it is forever and ever.
Anyway, so I'm not sure what he's doing. I don't think this is his strongest song, but it's still really good. I don't think there's a bad song by John Mark McMillan, although you could argue How He Loves. But I have my opinions on that. I don't think How He Loves should be sung in a church, but I think it's fine as a song on its own. Anyways, I'm not going to get off on that.
Just
tangent.
can't get past that sloppy wet kiss,
Yep.
can you?
Yep. Nope. I don't like it. Not a fan. Get off me. The only person allowed to give me sloppy wet kisses is my dog. But Prove My Love is he went into it on an Instagram post, and so basically the song is about being loyal to the people in your life, and basically proving your love to them even in the hard times, even in the times where you could walk away. This is just a song talking about dedication. So it's really good, and I like a lot of the little production tricks that he does on it. Talking about how he loves, a Killhawk says, so then sing Crowder version. Yeah, that's true. Although that's another song that
I
gets really
like the
repetitive.
song.
Yeah,
I
it's
like How
fine.
He Loves. I did a really I intermeshed like the gospel crucifixion story with How He Loves during like a youth prayer meeting, and that went over really well. So that was
Yeah. Maybe I also got tired
we
of
just
it.
agree to disagree.
I don't even know.
Yeah.
I'm not like strongly against it. I think it's fine. It is another one of those songs though that's very repetitive.
It is.
You
Yeah, we
know.
could have said that song.
But it's funny though because John Mark McMillan didn't intend for that song to be as popular as it was. Like he didn't really even intend for it to be like sung in churches. It just I think it took off when David Crowder band took it and covered it, and then it just blew up from there. But
I like the song. I think it's pretty.
yeah, it is pretty. But okay, so Prove My Love by John Mark McMillan. Go check it out. And I'm excited to check out more of his music when he releases it. Also, I didn't plan for this, but Josh Garrels, who's one of my favorites, he made a post and he's turned his barn into a studio, which means that he's going to be making more music.
Yay.
I'm really excited. He is one of my favorites. So, yeah, I think that's all that we got for now.
Thanks for having me, Clifford.
No, thanks for being on here.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. We had good long discussions. And yeah, be sure you guys to show appreciation for Lisa. And if some of you guys are late, she's off camera on a microphone, but be sure to show some appreciation for her, and maybe we'll have you back on the show sometime.
That would be so fun. I would enjoy that.
Yeah. So, oh, I'm not ready for my outro yet.
And thank you to Akil for like totally
Yeah, dude. Thanks for hanging out. You
diving
brought life
into
to the chat.
conversation.
Yeah. Really appreciate it. I mean, this is kind of like what I'm going for with this show, is like more interaction with the people that are watching. So please, guys, more of that. And yeah, and if you guys are watching later, be sure to leave questions in the comments, or just share your thoughts, and we'll address it in the next episode.
And you always leave a question and like a poll on Spotify, so go and find that.
Yes, for sure. I got the outro music on. So yeah, that's all we got for the show. Leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. I don't know if there are any other platforms where you can leave reviews, but leave one there. Leave a rating on Spotify. You can do that now. Like we said before, check out questions and polls on Spotify episodes. You can just go to the episode and go down. There'll be one there. Podwood Forecast. Go check it out. I'm working on a Batman episode. We talked about Batman. So that'll be out very soon. Also be sure to like and subscribe. I am still working on the new video. and that should be coming out soon. My goal is to be able to have an announcement in the next video. That's my goal. So fingers crossed you guys will be able to see that soon, and we'll talk about it on the show when it's out. Link in chat. I don't know what he could be talking about right there. Or maybe for the music that we were talking about. I'm not sure. Be sure to reach out. Akil Hawk, thanks for talking. All right. Well, thanks everyone. See you guys in the next episode. You guys take care.
Bye.